Hi everyone, it's Eli. You know how sometimes you stumble upon something truly game-changing in healthcare? Well, I found it. KinetiSense. This cutting-edge motion capture technology is transforming movement, assessment, and recovery. Imagine getting instant AI-driven insights without any wearables on your patient. That's right, no ping pong balls needed. Just pure, accurate data. Perfect for boosting athletic performance, pinpointing imbalances, and refining rehab. Top professionals worldwide trust KinetiSense to maximize productivity and results. Check out our partner page to learn more. Experience the revolution in movement. Welcome to Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More, the podcast that gives you a viewpoint in sports medicine that can't be found anywhere else. I'm your host, Eli Halleck, and we have a fantastic show ahead of us today. So, let's get started. Welcome to Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More. Today, we have a fantastic guest. I'm excited about it. Met him just a few weeks ago, and the conversation I had with him and other colleagues was truly inspiring. His resume, as you read it, is something I would aspire to work towards. Just phenomenal. The pedigree, what he's done over the years to develop as an athletic trainer into the position he's at is just fantastic. We'd like to welcome today Daryl Conway from the University of Michigan. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. And I just got to say this title because, man, I thought mine was long on my business card. This has got to take a few lines. You are the Executive Senior Associate Athletic Director and Chief Health and Welfare Officer for the University of Michigan Athletics. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes,
That
that is correct.
that just don't roll off the tongue. That's a rough one.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of words on a business card.
That's more than a line. That's for darn sure. Well, I got to be honest. When I met you at the CATA, I was just inspired after talking with you and listening to you, along with a few of your colleagues. Your career is amazing, and we'd really like to talk today about how you started out, what brought you to where you're at now, and what impact you have in your role at the University of Michigan.
Yeah. I got started in athletic training all the way back in eighth grade. Was playing football, played three sports in high school, and had the opportunity to attend the Art Monk football camp at Bowie State University of Art Monk from the Washington Redskins. And was walking to practice one day during football camp and saw Keoki Kamu, who was the assistant athletic trainer for the Redskins at the time, taping ankles, and it just amazed me how fast he was going at that time. What it looked like as an eighth grader taping ankles. So I just actually stood at the door watching him tape ankles because I was just mesmerized by what he was doing. And after about 40 minutes, he asked me could he help me, and we got to talking. And at the end of the camp, I brought my parents to see him because I was just mesmerized by what he did. And he long story short, he invited me to Redskins training camp where I'd go anyway because I was a big Redskins fan. After a practice one day, he and Bubba Tyre, the head trainer for the Redskins, took me back, showed me the athletic training room, and I was hooked on the profession. So that really was the start of how I got involved in the profession. Then had a opportunity when I was in 11th grade to work at a summer camp, Mason-Dixon basketball camp in Emmitsburg, Maryland. Had an opportunity to work there as a student and go to some Kramer workshops as a student, and met Mark Wagner, who's been my lifelong friend since then. He was a head athletic trainer at the camp, and we've been friends ever since. But great opportunity learning as a high school student.
I got to be honest, you don't hear many of us saying we got interested in eighth grade unless you're related to an athletic trainer. That's impressive. Wow. 8th grade. That's just phenomenal. But it all came from your love of sport and playing full time, and then apparently the love of the
Yeah,
Redskins too.
my parents were both teachers. My father was a teacher, a PE teacher, and a coach. And, they really instilled in me the value of education and to always, from a young age, always have an out that not everybody's going to make the NFL. Not everybody's going to make Major League Baseball. You need to have something to fall back on. So I love sport. So I was always searching, what is that career in sports that I can fall back on to combine my love of sports and love of playing different sports with an actual career.
And that's how so many of us end up in the field. We end up being athletes. We get a little dinged up, a little bruised and bumped, and lo and behold, we end up around a healthcare provider that we've never heard of, and it just becomes inspiring, right?
Yeah, I don't have that story. I never had surgery, knock on wood. I didn't tear my ACL. I didn't. That's not the way. That wasn't my pathway, like so many into the field of athletic training. But it's worked out. It's a great profession, great field. I wouldn't trade it a day in my life.
What I hear from so many of us that have been doing it for more than 10 years, wouldn't trade it. Well, maybe for a pirate treasure. I'd think about it at that point, you know. My wife might say, yeah, I'd have to trade it in for a pirate treasure. That'd be okay. But don't see that happening anytime soon. Now, so you started out many years ago. I look back. What year did you get certified actually?
1993,
1993.
April
Wow.
17th, 1993.
Well, that's a good year. I believe it was 4 years later in April was the year I got certified. So a good month, as far as I'm
Yes,
concerned.
absolutely. That was a
Definitely.
month everybody had to take their tests then.
Oh God, I'll never forget that. Yep. God, that was stressful. So glad I'm done with that. Now, so you get certified and you jump in, and you don't jump in lightly. I mean, in 93, I'm sitting here looking at it and it's saying assistant athletic trainer, New York Jets.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough during my time at the University of Delaware. I Keoki had advised me that the NFL teams all hire students during the summer. So my freshman year in Delaware's program, I applied, sent a letter, resume to all 30 NFL teams at the time, and got a nice set of stationery back. My mother still has all the rejection letters from all the NFL teams. Nice raised logos, color stationery when you actually use snail mail with envelopes.
Oh yes, oh yes. Long gone, but yes, love
So
it.
I got a nice set of stationery back, and then it was finals week my freshman year. I got back to my dorm. No cell phones, no text messages, no real email actually at that time. And my head athletic trainer, Keith Handling from Delaware, called my dorm room, said, "Hey, Joe Patton from the New York Jets wants to talk to you." And so I hopped on my bike, rode back to the athletic training room, called on his office phone, and Joe P said that they'd had some students that turned them down from a summer internship perspective, and they wanted to take a shot on a young kid. So I actually worked 3 summers with the New York Jets as a student, with Joe Patton and Pepper Burris and
Oh
Bob Reese,
wow.
and
Oh
got a
wow.
call my senior year of school from Joe Patton and Bob Reese that Pepper had just accepted the head athletic trainer job for the Green Bay Packers, and that they wanted me to join their staff full time. So I was, one of the lucky ones that the day after graduation, I packed my car, drove up to Long Island, and started working that next day, the New York Jets.
That's phenomenal. Wow. Don't know many people that get that lucky sometimes. So that's
No,
incredible. Incredible. But that's also a testament to your work ethic because they don't just hire anybody.
yeah, I mean, it's testament to being in the right place at the right time, and yes, working hard. I think that's the key to the luck is you always have to work hard. That's where it starts.
So true. Once you get that good work ethic, people see it and they start to believe it and they start to believe in you. And good things happen to those good people that work hard. And we both know that. You see that in the profession often.
No, absolutely. I think athletic trainers are some of the hardest working professionals out there. They don't get the credit. But hands down in the athletic department, I would say that athletic trainers are some of the hardest working professionals out there.
I know I won't disagree with that comment, nor will either of our assistant athletic trainers here at St. Francis High School. So we put in some time and we put in some effort, and that's important because really what we're doing, we're taking care of others.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
Looking at your career, I mean, it really spans assistant athletic trainer and professor, University of Delaware, director of sports medicine, Morgan State University, director of sports medicine and instructor, University of Northern Iowa, head athletic trainer, head football athletic trainer, which we know that's just a couple hours a week at University of Central Florida, and then assistant athletic director, sports medicine, University of Maryland. Now, as you transition into more of these administrative roles slash clinical roles, what was kind of the big difference that you started to see clinically?
I think clinically, I think we've just become a much more hands-on profession. There's very little, oh, I'm just going to set you up on ice and stem, or hot pack and stem. There's very little that our modalities in our athletic training rooms don't get used that often compared to previously. We are a much more hands-on profession. We're a much more movement profession now. And I think that's good. You can see how athletic training rooms have evolved. It used to be you were designing an athletic training room and you were, how many tables can I fit in my athletic training room? Because you needed tables and you needed stem machines in your athletic training room. Now it's more about how can I design a bunch of movement space, and what spaces can I have that I can actually get down and move and do exercises with. So I think that's been one of the biggest clinical areas that I've seen, and also just the functionality of what we do clinically has completely changed. We focus a lot more now on the prehab, the mobility training, all the stuff that we do before injury. I think that's a big piece that athletic trainers have done and been successful at, is that prevention aspect and figuring out how we can prevent a lot of the injuries, especially the soft tissue injuries.
And I see that you mentioned functional analysis. You're a certified functional movement screening clinician, and you're certified level one and level two. So FMS, I presume clinically is something that you strongly believe in.
Yes, I'm a big believer in, let's figure out what's causing the problem and figure out where we can, solve the problem before it starts. I used to love In Living Color. So I was a big Fire Marshal Bill fan. So,
God,
be the
yes,
fire
love
marshal,
that.
not the firefighter. We're the ones that are going around preventing fires, not the ones that just running in with a big hose to put out the fire. So I'm very big on how can we prevent this from happening before we ever have to deal with it.
Figuring out what's wrong in the chain before that chain breaks down or has the kink.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And with that, as you became more and more clinically advanced, I presume you talked about it quite often and educated others and got people, so to speak, on the bandwagon.
Yeah, I'm very rarely ever the smartest in the room, but I believe in having the smartest room. So I've been lucky in my career that I've always surrounded myself with people that are way smarter than me, and they've taught me a ton. And there's some brilliant people out there that do this well every single day, and that come up with some brilliant ideas and brilliant concepts around preventing injuries and mobility screening and what we're doing. Some of the leaders in the profession.
I would have to agree with you. The key is not to be the smartest person in the room, but to surround yourself with the smart and or smartest people you can. That's been my profession. I'll be the first one, and my producer who's listening to this as well will admit I'm never the smartest person in the room. But I
No,
tell you what,
absolutely.
you get the right people around you who excel in different areas, and it makes everyone better.
No, you have to have an interdisciplinary healthcare team. I talk often about, you can have the best orthopedic surgeon and you can be the best athletic trainer there is in the world. But you know what? That ACL is not going to get back to full participation if you don't have a good strength coach with you. You don't have a good dietitian with you. You don't have a good mental health practitioner with you because, that kid's never going to gain muscle if he's going and eating McDonald's every single afternoon or if he's going home and smoking a joint every single night. They're never going to get back. So it takes a truly interdisciplinary healthcare team all working together to truly see that success.
Now, talking about that interdisciplinary team, as a person at the high school level, we're very fortunate that we're following that medical model nowadays, which is a big push in our profession. And in looking at the description, as I said, the 2 or 3 lines on that business card that you have for your title, I presume the University of Michigan, that's the model. And with you in that position, how has that enhanced our profession, being able to do that more medical model of taking care of athletes, pulling us out of the quote unquote athletic department?
So, I mean, here at the University of Michigan, we're still athletic department employees. We're still hired by the athletic department. We're still paid by the athletic department. So we don't have what people define as the medical model. And I always push back on this because people have a general kind of definition of the medical model. You should be hired by your hospital. You should be hired by an academic unit. You shouldn't be hired by athletics. It's really not who hires you. It's really the autonomy that you're given and the independence that you're given.
Exactly.
So I will
Exactly.
argue that even though we're hired by athletics, we have more autonomy and independence than probably anybody in the country. And that all starts with our leadership of our athletic department, our AD, leadership of our university, from our president and from our general counsel and from our board of regents. Our AD has a meeting every single year. And he has me stand up, he has our head team physician stand up, he has our director of compliance stand up, he has our director of academics stand up, and he makes it known to everybody that if it's a medical decision, it's Daryl and the head team physician has the final say. You can ask questions, but once they give you the answer, pushing them or trying to insert yourself in a medical issue is a no-go. And it says the same thing about academics. You can ask questions, but trying to insert yourself in an academic issue or compliance issue is a no-go. And that's truly autonomy. So it's not so much to me medical model, it's more about autonomy. Because you can look at some schools that our leaders have been in the medical model for 30 years, but their head football athletic trainer still got fired when the new coach came in. Because at the end of the day, who does that coach report to? You can be in the medical model, but that coach reports to the president of the university. Who does the head of the hospital report to? Report to the president of the university. So if that football coach wants somebody new, they're going to get somebody new because they're more powerful than whoever there is at the hospital. I think it's important to understand that you're hired as an athletic trainer. You're not hired as the head football athletic trainer. You're hired as an athletic trainer and assigned to football. So just because your job assignment changes doesn't mean that you're fired. And I think that's where some people get kind of mixed up with regards to the medical model versus autonomy. I will always push for it really doesn't matter where your paycheck is coming from. It matters, do you have that autonomy or independence of healthcare?
Completely agree with that. That's 1000% correct. And also, it's important that that check cashes when you do get it, right?
Absolutely.
That's important. But yeah,
The most important
autonomy,
piece.
yeah, most important piece. The autonomy, though, we're fortunate, and I know many of our colleagues are. It really comes down to, as you said, administration, believing in you, believing in what you do, and creating that relationship where they feel they can trust you taking care of kids. That's what it really comes down to. And if you have administrative support, that's what you need. And that's so true. Excellent point, and I appreciate it. Now, with that autonomy also comes a lot of Well, trust. And as we talked about earlier, there are a lot of people looking to you at all times. So, how do you, as the executive senior associate director, how do you take that in and deal with the needs of the program when it's brought to you?
Everything for me goes back to relationships, and you have to build relationships. You have to build positive relationships, and your relationships just can't be one-sided. And they have to be multidisciplinary and all over the community and all over your organization, that you have to build those relationships. And I think once you build relationships, that's where the trust will come. But you can't just, you have to build trust in people. They have to be able to trust you. I had the opportunity to go to Disney Institute about 12 years ago, best continuing education I've ever done, but understanding why people worship a rodent, why people pay thousands of dollars a year to go see a mouse. And part of that is that Disney's philosophy is overmanaged and thinking about things to a greater degree that others ignore, and really building lifetime customers. And that's what we're trying to do in athletics. And I think as an athletic trainer, and I think we do that a lot of times very well. But that's the mindset that we have to have around customer service, is to build a lifetime customer. And when we think of that from the athletic training side, think about how many students that you've had at your school. And, you know, 3 years after they graduate, where's the first place they come back to when they come back to visit? You want them coming back to the athletic training room. And it's the same thing at my level, 4, 5, 6, 10 years down the road, when they're newly married, have a young family. You want that first place that they stop to be the athletic training room. And that's your lifetime customer. And that's how you judge your lifetime customers, especially in social media. How many of your former student athletes will reach out to you? Hey, I sprained my ankle playing pickup basketball in college. What was that thing that you always told me to do?
Yep.
That's a lifetime customer because they're trusting you. You've developed those relationships. I'm sure you're getting close. You aren't as seasoned as I am, but you're probably getting close to seeing kids of kids that you had at the beginning of your career.
Oh, yes, and
And
that is
that's the
a
lifetime customer.
awakening when that happens. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a lifetime customer when the first place that they visit, they bring their own kid in and say, "Hey, you listen to everything that he tells you. He got me through high school. He got me through my torn ACL. This guy knows what he's doing. You respect him and you listen to everything he tells you." That's what we have to do. That's the relationship that we have to build, and that's the trust that comes with that.
And I got to be honest, that's probably one of the most gratifying personally moments when I have a former student, former athlete check in with me, like you said, 5, 10 years down the road. Hey, Mr. Halleck, I remember we talked about this. This just happened to a friend, or it happened to me, or what was it we used to do? The fact that they entrust us with their health care that far down the road says we really made an impact at that moment. And to me personally, that is all I ever wanted to do. And I think that's what most of us, that's all we want to do is make an impact.
No, absolutely, absolutely. That's why we got into this professional, to make an impact.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta agree with you. Now, talking about making an impact in the beginning, we were discussing off air some of the things you're passionate about. And I gotta agree, I align with them so much. We were talking about emergency planning, EAPs, AEDs, athletic trainers at the high school level and how we make a difference. And you have really orchestrated quite a few difference making moments in our profession by stepping up and really taking care of certain situations. So, if we could talk a little bit about EAPs, emergency planning, and how passionate you are and why, and how important they are, I would appreciate your thoughts.
I think when we talk about relationships, that's where it starts. You know, you have to develop relationships in order to have a EAP. I'm just always a person of being prepared. I don't like to be surprised. I like to be prepared for what's ever going to happen. And you know, long time ago, when I first took EMT school and got my EMT, you know, one of my professors are like, you know, you're not studying or practicing for the exam. You're studying or practicing for the day when you're the only difference between life or death for your patient.
That's powerful statement right there,
And
and
you
it's
know, and
so
so
true.
part of that is emergency action planning and how you're practicing and preparing for that emergency. And have you thought about it? What have you thought about? How are you going to handle this? What happens when those types of scenarios? So that's kind of where my passion comes from. Greg Harden, who one of my mentors, always said, if it's predictable, it's manageable. You know, if you can predict that it's going to happen, we should be able to manage it. And you know,
I
as
love
athletic
that.
trainers, we're vultures on a perch. We go out to practice, we sit up on our perch. We're that hawk on the side of the road, on the light post on the side of the road, waiting for that squirrel to get hit. And we're going to come down, swoop down, and devour it as roadkill. That's us as athletic trainers waiting for that injury to happen. But if we can predict that it's going to happen, we should be able to manage it. So if I can predict that I go out to baseball in the hour and shortstop, left fielder, and third baseman collide going for a foul ball, I should be able to manage that. You know, in the moment that it's happening, that's all emergency action planning.
That's such an easy and fantastic way to break it down. Emergency action planning, and I'm a lifelong Boy Scout, so Cub Scout all the way up. You know, be prepared, be prepared, be prepared. It drives my wife nuts. I am ready for almost anything. I mean, there are moments I screw up at home, and I'll be the first to admit it. But if I'm not prepared, I feel like I've let people down. We were discussing them in a previous episode, and it's probably about 20 years ago when University of Georgia put out their emergency action plans and really got up on the pedestal and really started talking about it. And I remember going online when online sucked and finding their EAPs and going, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And using that as the framework to create our EAPs. And when it became a standard, everybody's asking me, well, do we have them? Of course, we've had them for 20 years now. But not everybody is always prepared, which is upsetting.
Again, I think back to if my daughter's playing, you know, I'm going to be upset if the school's not prepared for something to happen. And you know that my athletes are my kids. You know, I treat them just like my kids, and I'm going to be upset if I failed them because I wasn't prepared.
Yeah, I every year somebody asks, I've got daughters, only daughters, and they look at me, aren't you upset you never had a son? I'm like, I got 650 sons every year. New lot every 4, but I tell you what, I got 650 sons, and I'm gonna care for them in a positive way as much as possible every year because those are my boys. I wanna take care of them. That's my goal is I am an extension of their family at that point. I'm helping take care of them, and that's really how we need to look at our patients, our kids, our student athletes.
Absolutely.
Now, you're also extremely passionate about catastrophic and crisis response in those EAPs and reducing risk management. Of course, something that's become more and more prevalent at the high school level, which wasn't AEDs. And I know how I feel about them. I mean, we got 7 on campus, all throughout our campus. That's how I feel about it and our staff. If you could take a few minutes and talk about the importance, as you see it, of being prepared for those situations and why it's so important, I would truly appreciate it.
You know, I think the research is very clear that for every minute that you don't get defibrillated by AED, your chance of survival goes down 10%, at least 10%. So I think that research is very clear that if it takes 5 minutes for somebody to get the AED to you, you have a 50% chance of living. Okay. If it takes 7 minutes, and 7 minutes really isn't that long, you know, if it takes 7 minutes, you have a 30% chance of living. So the quicker that we can get people defibrillated, the sooner in a cardiac arrest that it increases their chance of survival. And a lot of that is due to how quickly do we recognize that they're in cardiac arrest. So I think that all comes from the planning and the preparation and the education of, do you have AEDs? Are you asking those questions, especially with your kids and yourself at different places, especially at the youth sports level and the high school sports level? I'll be the first to say I work in Disney World here at the University of Michigan. We have resources. We have a level one trauma center 2 minutes away. Our EMS headquarters is a mile away. That's Disney World. That's not how every single athlete lives and works every single day. But I'm passionate about those places that are that strip mall carnival every single day and not Disney World, and how they're living. And do we have access to AEDs, and how can we get access to AEDs and have a plan of where they are and how we're going to use them?
Elevate your knowledge, ignite your curiosity, and compete with the best minds at events hosted by the American Academic Competition Institute. AACI's sports medicine competitions feature practical exercises, challenging quizzes, specialty tests, and keynote speakers that foster knowledge and social engagement in healthcare and sports medicine. Go to aacitest.org for more information on upcoming regional and national competitions. Sign up for the ultimate intellectual showdown. And then the training for most, even though they're automatic, and they are, as I say, high school student proof, you got to be comfortable to grab that out of the box and jump on. So training everybody in the room that you can.
Yeah, absolutely. First, you have to know that you need it, and know that you need to utilize AED. And then you have to know from the emergency action plan, where is the closest one? And how do I access the closest one? And I think that's where your emergency action planning, that's where your communication, that's where your training comes into play.
Now I got to ask, I know, as you said, you're Disneyland, if not Disney World over there. And I can attest to that. I've got a longtime friend of my family who's in the program at Michigan, Stephanie Probert. If you're listening to this, hope you're doing well. You're on year 2. You're getting ready to get certified. So good luck this upcoming April, May, or June, whenever you're taking the test. And just hearing the availability of staff and the availability of, as you said, the equipment, how would you go about when you're not at the Disneylands? When, like you said, you're at the local carnival house and you need a little help. Any recommendations on what to do to try and excel in those locations and make a difference and get that equipment you need?
I think first and foremost is understanding what equipment you have and where is it. So many high schools have AEDs, and they have multiple AEDs, but one's locked in the nurse's office and one's locked in the main office.
So true.
So outside of 8 to 3, those AEDs aren't available. When do we play high school sports? We play them after 3 or 4 o'clock, when the nurse is long gone for the day and the main office is locked. So where are these AEDs is the biggest question. So many times we're out at 5:30 at night on the field and the whole building's locked. So the AED's not out on the field, it's back behind a locked building. So I think first and foremost, understand what resources you do have and get some of those resources moved to more reasonable areas of the school. How many cardiac arrests have ever happened in a nurse's office versus and right outside the gym, right outside the weight room where the cardiac arrests are likely to happen? The school can have 2 AEDs, but if you move one outside the gym, you've probably relocated it closer to where the emergency is going to happen. Develop relationships. Develop a relationship with your battalion chief, with your fire chief, with your training officer. Because guess what? When they come in and they say that we need, if the fire marshal walks in and says we need 3 more AEDs in this building because we don't have an AED within a 2-minute time period from where anything can happen, guess what's going to happen? The fire marshal said it. It's going to happen that week.
You're gonna get it.
And the other relationship to me to have is with your general counsel, with your risk manager, and really talk to them in terms that they understand. What does a lawyer, what does a risk manager understand? They understand zeros on a check. And just ask them how many zeros you want to write on the check, because they understand that an AED costs $1,000. But if we don't have an AED and something happens, that lawsuit's going to cost millions. So they'd much rather give you $1,000 and save millions than ignore you. And so I think that's where it starts, of building those relationships. And there's tons of AED grant programs out there. There's tons of places that you can get AED. You just have to have relationships with the right people and point things out to people. I can guarantee you, the first Friday night in September, every high school football staff is walking. Their coaches are walking out in new shoes, new polos, new pants, new hats, and new pullovers. And so we're saying that a high school football, that their coaching staff is more important than buying the AED. The proliferation now of new helmets or alternative helmets in high school football is crazy. That we're spending $500, $600 for a second helmet for a high school kid, but we don't have AEDs at our schools. So have those difficult conversations with anybody who's involved in your higher administration, and really just ask them, even if you're at the boys club level, if you're at the club sports level, ask them how many zeros you want to write on the check. Because I can guarantee you, I can go this Saturday to a local baseball park and there's a club tournament going on, and we'll see every single kid walk with a brand new bat bag, two $300 bat in their bag, brand new shoes, and a brand new glove. Every single club team will have at least 3 different uniforms, because you have to have the camouflage jersey, you have to have the white, you have to have the pinstripe, you have to have the gray, and these are 8, 9, 10-year-old kids that we're buying $300 worth of uniforms for them to play. That's where I start, is developing those relationships and asking people how many zeros you want on the check. If something happened to your kid right here, that's great that they have 2 brand new bats, and those bats are going to look great in their coffin because we couldn't spend the money to get an AED.
Ooh, that's a hell of a statement. I love that. But it's true. It's so true. Everybody's so enamored with the new flashy thing when what you need is a little protection and to keep those zeros down. I've used that quote many times. Actually, when we went to get our first AED, well, what's more important, the zeros at the end of the check and saving the kid, or the fact that you say we're going to increase? And that was my favorite comment from one of the administrators. Well, by having it, we're increasing our liability. And I looked at him, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. We're decreasing liability because we're mitigating it. We're showing in good faith that we're placing equipment to protect those here. And it won't be a kid, it will be a grandparent, it will be a father, it'll be a mother in the stands. And it has been, in our case, football games in the stands, a announcer at a basketball game, umpire, but because we had everything we needed, we were prepared for the situation. And yeah, it's important.
No, I mean, that's my biggest message, is making sure that we can save a life in a cardiac arrest. And people in cardiac arrest need CPR, so making sure people are trained to recognize CPR or recognize cardiac arrest right away. And Jonathan Dresner has an incredible video, 90 seconds to watch, about recognition of cardiac arrest, but then also, where's your AED? How quickly can you get it on them?
And you said that name was Jonathan Dresner.
Yes.
All right. Got to look that one up.
University of Washington, Jonathan Dresner. If you just Google that, it's a great 90-second video about recognition of cardiac arrest and what does it look like. And I think that's the start of it. If you can recognize cardiac arrest in 15 seconds, you can get that AED on them in less than 2 to 3 minutes. That's going to save their life. I think the research is somewhere in young athletes of upwards of over 80%, that if they initiate CPR within 2 minutes and get an AED on them within 3 minutes, that you have over an 80% save rate.
That's what we want. We want to save them. We want to take care of those young men, young women, whoever's in front of us, adults, whatever. It comes down to taking care and saving. That's it, no doubt. Thank you. Yeah, I'll be watching that video, and I have a feeling so will my students in my sports medicine class coming up next week. So thank you for that. I know you have, as I said, just a hell of a resume. And we're going to get to that, a couple specific questions. But I also noticed you have a heck of a volunteer record with the NATA and other entities in the profession. And you've really done a lot to bring athletic training to the forefront of where it is today. And first off, I'd like to thank you for that because we've come so far since I started studying this back in 1990. And I know it's because of work that people like you have done. And so thank you. In looking at some of these committees, man, you've really made a difference. And I'm curious, which entity or which committee or which whatever that you were part of, did you really feel you made the most impact?
I think the majority of my work has been with the Ethnic Diversity Advisory Committee at the NATA. So, I've definitely been a part of great impact made there. I think having the opportunity to serve on some of the position statement writing groups, the spine injury and sport group, the lacrosse spine injury and sport group, and then the latest EAP position statement, I think will ultimately make a big impact.
I don't see how they wouldn't. I know diversity right now is not a shiny word, but in my profession and in my opinion, it's mandatory because we are a diverse community, we're a diverse nation. We're taking care of everybody. There needs to be diversity, and people need to be helped sometimes in understanding it. So I think it's phenomenal when the NATA started it and the NATA brought it along. I know it's big with our state association, and I think it's super important. So thank you for all the work you've done there. Keep it up, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times diversity gets a knock or DEI gets a knock, but I think everything starts with cognitive diversity. And having people around you that think differently than you, I think is a start of any other type of diversity. If you succeed in having cognitive diversity, any other type of diversity, equity, inclusion is going to take care of itself because you're automatically, if you have people around you, if you surround yourself with people who think differently than you, you're automatically going to find a diverse nature and an equitable nature and an inclusive nature of everything that you're doing.
Love that. That's a phenomenal comment. I couldn't agree with you more because that's how we all become better is understanding what other people think who don't think like us. Because with that knowledge, you can grow, you can learn, you can empathize, you can sympathize, you can become a better human being, let alone a better clinician, but a better human being. And I think that's so important in life.
Absolutely.
Now, I do have to ask, you've got a couple cool things that have professionally happened. Most distinguished athletic trainer by the NATA in 2019. That's a hell of a nod. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I mean, let's be honest, we don't look for those awards. We don't aspire to those awards, but when they happen, it really says you've done a lot for the profession.
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything, you don't wake up and say that this is what I'm going to do. You just try to wake up and make a difference in people's lives and a difference in your profession. And, I have been blessed to have the opportunity to do that and been blessed with a lot of good people around me that's given me the opportunities and helped me along the way.
But the key is you've been willing to find those people to place around you, or they have found you. And that's a sign of a good person because you want to gravitate to those people that make you better and you can help others become better. So that's a big nod to you. I'll be honest. And I appreciate that. You know what? We're coming up on an hour. It happened pretty dang quick, didn't
Yes, absolutely.
it?
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you being here today. And obviously, I'm sure you've got a full boatload of work coming up, so I don't want to take too much of your time. But I gotta ask just a couple more questions. One, definitely, what is something that you've been the proudest that you've been able to do, whether it's in the profession or outside of the profession, where you've been the proudest that you think you've made the impact or made a difference? What's the one of those things?
I just think the work in educating people had a lot of opportunities to work in educating people in emergency management skills and emergency management techniques, and I think that's been what I've been the proudest of. My company that I own of Ed Strap Sports Medicine Emergency Management, and we have the opportunity to go around and educate a ton of people. We've done 29 of the 32 NFL teams and multiple NBA and Major League Baseball and other professional league teams, along with colleges and high schools. And I think, what you get proudest of is when you've been there and we've done scenarios and we've worked with them and things didn't go right in practice. And then we remediate and we go back, but then they have an emergency later that year and everything's gone right. And then they give you a call and say, hey, everything worked perfectly because of the training that you did. I think that's been what we're most proud of.
And I just realized as you said that, we've been talking about so much, we never even got to that aspect. So tell us a little bit more about that, please, so our listeners understand what you've created and what you've developed in that neck of the woods, so to speak.
So Ed Strapp, who's a Maryland State Trooper, flight paramedic, athletic trainer, ski patroller, works for U.S. Ski and Snowboard. He does a little bit of everything, but his main daily job is as a Maryland State Trooper and flight paramedic, where he flies on the helicopters in Maryland. He and I, about 7 years ago, formed a company called Sports Medicine Emergency Management that we go out and do emergency management training for athletic trainers and sports medicine professionals. So we have a pretty unique program. We're kind of a hybrid program where we blend virtual didactic lectures and then we come on site and do a lot of skills training, and but then also some scenario based training. We believe in the walk, jog, run philosophy, and so the walk is kind of the pre work that you do. Then the jog, we come in the morning and we do a lot of skills work. We want you to perfect your skills. So we're going to do 15 minutes of CPR. Make sure you perfect your CPR with high fidelity mannequins and understanding how deep your compressions are, how fast your compressions are, how you're working as a pick through, what airways are you using. Then in the afternoon, we'll come in and do scenario based simulations of your emergency action plan, where we're taking you through from start to finish, no stopping, no timeout, a rehearsal of your emergency action plan. And then we spend about 10 to 15 minutes debriefing that scenario. What went right? What went wrong? What would you change? And then going through any skills that need to be touched up on from the scenario. So we call it stressful training. We want to put you in stressful situations because we want our day of training to be the worst day of your life, where you're able to see emergencies that you don't normally see and able to respond to those, make mistakes, but then learn from those mistakes. We like to call them halo skills, high acuity, low occurrence skills that take place in the athletic trainer's lives. CPR, bag valve mat skills, insert in the airway, you know, equipment removal, cervical spine injury management. Those are things we don't deal with every single day. The unresponsive athlete, uncontrolled bleeding, medical emergencies, things like that we don't deal with. But when we do have to deal with them, they're high acuity. You need to be able to be skilled in it to save somebody's life.
That's fantastic. And I'm on the website right now looking at it. It's impressive. I love the comment, walk, jog, run. I mean, that's really it. And basically, it all goes back to being prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where we start. We want to make sure that we want to rehearse your emergency action plan from start to finish. If you don't call EMS doesn't come. If you don't send somebody to the gate, EMS gets lost. So really going through and rehearsing your emergency action plan, and that's where it comes with your AEDs. We aren't just going to bring the AED to the side of the field because we're practicing there. We want your AED to be where it normally will be. And then how long does it take? And we're going to sit there for stopwatch and time you. What's the time to your first compression, your first breath? The AED arrives, the AED is set up. How quickly can you get equipment on in that stressful situation? And those are things that we want to remediate, and we want to get to standardized times using kind of a very competency-based checklist. So everything we're doing is based on specific competencies that you have to meet with regards to the skills that you're trying to complete.
That's fantastic, because this is how you save a life. This is how you save a person. Practice, practice, practice. Be prepared.
Absolutely.
Love it. Wow. We're gonna have to come back another day and just do an episode on this.
Anytime.
Whoa.
Happy to do it.
You know what, Daryl, this has been so educational. I truly appreciate you being here. We've been on an hour, and I really don't want to take too much of your day, because I know, well, let's be honest, there are other things to do. We got to work, man. We got to pay the rent. We got to pay everything that's going on, and we do that by working. Want to say thank you today for being part of this. Thank you for opening our eyes about being prepared. Walk, jog, run. And yeah, I love the comment. I want that to be the most stressful day in your life. If training is the most stressful day in your life, it is a good life, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to say thank you on behalf of Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More, and all our listeners, for being on today. Hope you have a wonderful day, and the rest of your week is fantastic. And good luck this year.
Thank you.
You have a great day, Daryl. Thank you very much.
You too.
Been very educational. Thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Want to make sure you hear every episode? Remember to like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast. Don't forget to share our podcast with your colleagues, family, and friends. Your support will help more people find and enjoy our content. Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More is directed by Eli Hallett. It is produced by Gabriel Hallett. Our theme music is by Coma Studios via Pixabay. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely those of the contributors. Want to know more about us? Visit us at wrapituppodcast.com. That's with one P, wrapituppodcast.com. Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More is a production of Hallett Consulting, LLC.